Hello everyone, my name is Heather and welcome to the channel Bookables and welcome to my top 10 favorite books of 2024. So I love doing this video every year. I love reflecting back, looking on the previous year and seeing what books I really loved, what books I didn't like, and what books were so-so. So today we're going to talk about the Big 10, my favorites of 2024. So overall, 2024 was a decent reading year for me. I read 94 books, which was amazing, honestly, but I'm going to break it up into further. So out of those 94 books, I read 58 romance, so you can clearly see that is where a lot of my reading comes from. I read 15 thriller, which is a lot lower than usual, which is kind of sad for me. I read 7 fantasy books, which I think is pretty good, honestly. 4 nonfiction, which is very unlikely, which is very unlike me, but I'm very happy about it. 4 literary fiction books, which I would like to up. 3 young adult books, which is pretty on par, and 1 historical. Get on to my top 10 books of the year. So I've categorized them, obviously working from 10 all the way to number 1. This year, when I read my favorite book of the year, I knew without doubt it was going to be my favorite book of the year. Some years it's like that, some years it's not, but either way, let's get into it. And at number 10, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. I would have given it a 5 stars, and I'll tell you why. And that is PSI Hate You by Lauren Connolly. I read this book in November, loved it. I think it's going under the radar a lot, but this was a beautiful book about grief, second chance love. Follow Maddie, and at the beginning of the book, her brother sadly has passed away from cancer, and she is very sad about it because he was her brother, he was her best friend, and the book begins at the funeral where she learns that Dom, who is her brother's best friend and also kind of Maddie's old flame, is the executor of the will. Now, Maddie's brother has given everybody letters that is at his funerals, and he actually gives Maddie and Dom a letter together, and he actually gets them an adventure to go on together where he wants his ashes to be spread in like the 6 states that he never got to go to, and he sends them coordinates, so they have to coordinate and be together, and Maddie's very upset about this because she doesn't want to experience her grief with anybody else, and she doesn't really want to spend any time with Dom because that's a very sore topic for her because she loved him once and now it's kind of reopening an old wound. But of course the book goes on, they have to go through this. Second chance romance happens between Maddie and Dom, and it's also a lot about grief. And this wasn't a full 5 out of 5 for me because of Maddie. Maddie was a horrible character, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like she had this huge block on her shoulder with Dom, and she never let him explain things or why they happened in the past. And I was like, you're both adults, you both can talk about your feelings instead of just being bitter and stuff about this. And then finally she let him talk, and she's like, oh, I don't know why I was mad so many years. And I'm like, seriously? So this one's at the bottom of the list because of that. Maddie was just a horrible character, but I love the romance. I love the talk about grief and things like that, and I do really enjoy this book. Coming in at number 9 is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This was the first thriller I read in 2024, and I loved it. It's a fun one. It's a one that you have to suspend your disbelief. It's basically about a character named Evie, or is that her name? She is kind of like, think of the show Alias, where she has to assume different aliases while she's on a job and pretend to be somebody else. And her job has been going on for quite some time, involved with this guy. She has to figure out his secrets and things like that. And then her past kind of comes up to bite her. It's a fun one. It's not the best thriller I ever read by any scope of the imagination, but I think it's the only thriller on this list, actually, because I didn't read a lot of thrillers this year, weirdly enough. I don't know why. I'm sad about that. But either way, it's a fun one. If you want a fun, mysterious thriller that you have to suspend your disbelief for, I would recommend checking this one out. If you want something that's deep and it's going to really keep you guessing and have really well-crafted things, this might not be it for you. That's number 8, a book that totally surprised me, and that is A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinley. I bought this because of the cover. If you don't know, I'm a very autumnal person. Autumn is my favorite season. It's my favorite season to decorate. It's my favorite season to be in, dress in. I named my daughter Autumn, for goodness sake. Like, her name is Autumn. I love autumn. So see a book that has a very autumnal cover, like, take my money, take it. And so I wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did. Now, I will preface by saying this is a very quiet, character-driven book. If you're looking for a witchy book, because this is a witchy book, that is very dynamic and interesting and does all these spells and it's amazing, this is not the book for you. It's a quiet, seasonal one. That's the best way I could describe it. In this book, we follow a character named Kate, who is a head witch, and she's very good with nature and things like that. She lives on this small cottage, and she's very good with her life. And then her birthday's kind of coming up, and you have to really declare your certain witchcraft, and also things are starting to go a little bit awry with her coven. One night, Matthew arrives, and Matthew is a kind of witch that she met years and years ago, and she kind of has animosity towards him, but she's a head witch. She has to give him sanctuary, and it kind of goes on from there. I loved it. It is a small town witchy read that is very character driven, and I just love it so, so much. One of my favorite autumnal books of all time. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't love this one if they're expecting a witchy book that is like really fast paced and fascinating. This is not one. Like, she talks about her mother was a kitchen witch. So she talks about recipes, and recipes are in there and how it will help with certain things. And she talks about her day-to-day life and things like that. And I don't know why, but I ate it up. Moving into number 7, another surprise book for me, and that is Ready or Not by Kara Bastone. I read this because a lot of people were talking about it, and I was hesitant to read it because it does have a trope that I don't really love, and that is accidental pregnancy. I just don't love reading about it, but this one, oh my gosh, it was just so adorable. In fact, this book and the next book I'm talking about are like some of the warmest, happiest books I read this entire year. Follows the character Eve, and she basically hooks up with a guy one night, and things happen, if you get what I'm saying. She accidentally falls pregnant, and she doesn't want to be with this guy, but she wants to co-parent, and she doesn't have any family really around her. Her parents have passed away sadly, but she has her best friend Willa, and it's a really hard relationship with Willa because Willa is married and is trying to conceive herself, and so Willa's got some feelings of like, oh, you got accidentally pregnant, well, meanwhile, I've been trying to be pregnant for years, and it's just not fair. It's a hard situation with conceiving and things like that. I've been there. I've been through it. I've had friends that have been pregnant very easily. It took me a long time to conceive my first child. I had lots of miscarriages. So there's on both sides, it's really hard. Eve's like, I wasn't really expecting this and didn't plan it. And Willa's like, I've been wanting this. Why do you have it? And why don't I have it? So it is a hard situation no matter what perspective you look at it. But basically, Eve really needs Willa, and Willa's kind of not there. And so who steps in but Shep, who is Willa's older brother. And Shep really helps out Eve, and then eventually they fall in love. And it was just so ooey gooey cute, and I just loved it. I think at one point in like the book, I don't think it's spoiling anything, the father of the baby was like, you know, he was talking to Shep, he's like, I really don't like want you in my life. And Shep's like, well, you're having a baby with a woman I love, so you're gonna have to get used to me, and I'm gonna have to get used to you, because we're not going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere. So I was like, man, it's a good man. Shep was an amazing cinnamon roll of a character. Number 6 is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. My favorite, like, warm, cozy, really just cutesy romance of the year. If you're looking for some cutesy, closed-door romance, Sarah Adams is the girl for you. I adored this one. So this one follows Annie and Will. And Annie, this is like book 3 in a, no, is this book 2? This is book 2 in a series. I forget what the series is called, but basically Annie is the sister of our main character in our first book, and Will is the bodyguard of her other main character in the first book. And so basically Annie owns a flower shop, and she really wants to find love. She wants to find a love that her parents had. Her parents are sadly passed away, and she just doesn't really know what to do. And so enter Will, who is a bodyguard, and he's like, you know what? I'll teach you, like, I'll like take you on like fake dates and teach you romance and other things, you know, but it's closed door. But it was just so freaking cute. Like, you have a bodyguard that's like really gruff and stuff like that, and then you have Annie, who's just so wholesome and adorable with owning a flower shop, and it's just so adorable. I love Sarah Adams books. Like, they're just quick, fun, romantic reads. That's exactly what I am hoping to read when I read one of her books, and I feel like this one is just, it's my favorite Sarah Adams book by far. Now we have our top 5. Now these top 5, like my last top 5, I really, really loved. These first top 5, like, chef's kiss, obsessed with this year, so just so you're aware. Number 5, Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood is an enigma, I'll tell you that. So she writes mainly adult romance with STEM characters, like women that are in the STEM field, that are science and smart, and I never get that because science is just so baffling to me. Like, I feel so stupid, but this is a complete 180. She usually does. This is a vampire werewolf romance, and I ate this junk up. If you don't know, hi, my name is Heather. I love all things autumn, and I also love all things vampires. I have loved vampires since I was like 11 when I first started watching Buffy. I was way too young, but that sealed the deal for me. I have just loved vampires since. So I've always been on the hunt for favorite vampire books. I've done videos about it. And this one, I was expecting to like it, not love it. So this one follows Misery and Lo. We have a character named Misery who's a vampire. Poor girl's name is Misery. And the vampires and werewolves and humans don't really get along. But basically at the beginning of this book, the werewolves and vampires form a treaty, and Misery has to marry the lead werewolf in the certain pack named Low. And so she has to move into the werewolf compound. And things are really different for her there because Misery's always been alone. Misery's lived a life of misery, poor girl. But this werewolf pack is more familial and get together. And, you know, this, and then Misery and Low maybe fall in love. And goodness, it is steamy. I will tell you that for sure. There's a lot of like alpha kind of fan fiction-y type of way in this book, but I ate it up. I loved it. The fact that I don't think we're getting the sequel to this book this year really, really saddens me because I love this one so much. If you're looking for a good vampire romance, steamy one, look no further. This will not disappoint. Next up, I have not a new one that got released in 2024, but one that I finally read in 2024. And that is Bright Remarkable Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This is a literary fiction that I had heard about but was skeptical about because the plot was kind of weird, but I adored it so, so much. So this is about a character named Tova, and Tova lives alone. She is, I think, in her 70s, and she just keeps busy with work. She works at this very small aquarium near Puget Sound, and she's like the night janitor, and so she mops the floors and makes sure the trash is taken out and things like that. And she just tries to stay busy because her son died many, many years ago, and her husband has recently died. So she's very lonely. And then who should she befriend in this aquarium is a giant Pacific octopus named Marcelo. And if you don't know, octopucci, I don't know how you say the pronunciation for the multiple ones, are very, very intelligent creatures. So Marcelo watches her quite a lot, and he can escape his tank and like walk around and get different food and, you know, things like that. And so basically he's been watching Tova, and you get the point of view of Marcelo in this book, and you learn about Tova's past and how kind of it's coming to fruition and things like that. And it's just so warm and wholesome and such a beautiful, beautiful read that I recommend anyone read. If you're like, why would I want to read a book about a woman befriending an octopus? Trust me, you're going to love it. It's just so heartwarming is the main thing with this book, and I adored it. Just, so, so, so good. Then, of course, no top 10 list for me would be complete without an Emily Henry book. I have given every Emily Henry book I've read 5 out of 5. She has remained on my top 10 list for literal years, and that's probably where she'll be. So welcome, stay a while. You'll be here a while. So at number 3, is that right? Yeah, number 3, I have Funny Story, her latest release. So this book, I wouldn't say is like my top favorite Emily Henry book. In fact, I have a whole video of ranking Emily Henry books. My favorite is Happy Place, which was released last year. I adored it. This one is really good. It's like in my favorite. It's in like my top 4, I would say. So this book follows a character named Daphne, and at the beginning of this book, Daphne is engaged to Peter, and everything's hunky-dory. They're going to get married. She moved to a different state just to be with him, a state that she's never known anybody at. Her family's not there. She doesn't know anybody. And so, you know, on the night of their respective like bachelor, bachelorette parties, Peter goes off his bachelorette party. Then he comes in the next day, and he's like, hey, remember my best friend Petra, who I said, like, you know, like, there's nothing to worry about there. We've never had feelings for each other. Well, I think I'm in love with her, so I gotta go. And of course, Daphne's like, what the freaking A is going on here? And so she is heartbroken and doesn't know what to do. She's in a new state that she doesn't know anybody in. Her fiance left her. She doesn't really have any friends. She doesn't have anywhere to live. So enter in Miles, who is Petra's ex, because the same conversation happened when Petra got home. She's like, hey, I went to my best friend's bachelor party. Remember that guy I told you that I was never in love with, but he's been my best friend? We're in love. You have, like, I'm leaving. And so basically Miles and Daphne connect, and they're like, well, you got left, I got left, let's just live together and be commiserate and just commiserate in our misery. And so what goes on from that is they form a friendship where he shows her, you know, the town and has her meet different people, and it's all about Daphne starting over from scratch because she never planned on this, and also a developing relationship between Daphne and Miles, and it's just so adorable. This one, I love Emily Henry books because yes, they're romance, but it does feature a lot of self-reflection as a character, which I love so much, and has a lot of character growth, and this was a great one. I love every Emily Henry book that's released. That's just the straight up honest truth about that. 2 is a book that I read on a whim, did not expect to love as much, did not expect to be number 2 on my list, but here we are, my friends, and that is The Wedding People by Alison Espach. What drew me to this was the cover. The plot sounded interesting, and I fell in love with it. This is a literary fiction book all about a character named Phoebe. So Phoebe is in a marriage, and she thinks everything's going great, and then her husband one night comes home, he's like, oh, by the way, I have been having an affair, and we're done. We are done. And so Phoebe's like, she doesn't know what to do. She's been married for so long. They don't have any kids. She's wanted kids, but never was able to do that. And she doesn't know like what to go. And so basically, she decides to go to Newport, Rhode Island, where her and her husband always thought about going to this really beautiful grand hotel that was like really, really expensive. They're like, we're just going to do it one day. And Phoebe's like, you know, why not? I'm divorced. What do I got going on there? And she's like, why not? I'm divorced. What do I got to lose? And so she goes there with the sole intention of ending her own life. Is I feel like I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like that's very important to know that if that's triggers for people, I fully am understanding, and I just want you to know. And so she goes there and she checks in, and then she learns that she is the only like true guest of the hotel, because the rest of the hotel is there for a wedding. Like the whole hotel has been rented out for a wedding. There she meets the bride, and the bride's quite pissed that Phoebe's there. She's like, why are you here? This is my wedding week. I don't need you to be here. And eventually Phoebe's like, I'm here. You don't have to worry about me for much longer. And then the bride's like, you're going to ruin my wedding date by just, you know, offing yourself. The bride's very upset. She's like, oh, so you're not only here to like ruin my wedding week by just being here, you're going to eventually, you know, do what you're planning to do. It's not spoiling to say Phoebe does not go through with it. Somehow she ends up being friends with the bride, as haughty and like self-righteous and spoiled this bride is. You go through the whole wedding week, and it's basically a character deep dive into Phoebe, with kind of reconciling her past and being okay with who she is, and kind of expanding her horizons. Also, you get to see the wedding party and how horrible they all are. Like, they're so horrible. But something about this book I just loved and connected with so much. I adored it. If you want just a great character growth type of book, I would highly recommend checking this one out. So time has come for my favorite book of the entire year, and I knew as soon as I finished this book it was going to be my favorite book, and that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Now, I have been a fan of her for years. I have read her very first book, The Friend Zone, which I did not enjoy at all, but I've seen her work progress, and I think she's just getting better and better. And this one, whew, it was romantic, it was sad, it knocked me in my gut, I connected with it. It was phenomenal. My favorite book of hers, by far, her best yet, and I'm excited to see what she's going to do in the future. So this book starts off with a Reddit thread with a guy named Justin saying, hey, I have this curse kind of. Every time I end a relationship, the girl goes on to find her soulmate. Meanwhile, I'm just here like, just standing here with my hands in my pockets, you know? And Emma replies, she's like, I have the same thing too. Whenever I end a relationship, the guy always next girl that he ends up with is his soulmate. And so they decide, hey, why not meet and maybe date for a little bit casually, and maybe we can like cancel each other's curses out. Like, you know, it's kind of, you know, ridiculous. But basically, she moves, I forget where is it in Michigan or like Minnesota, something like that. She's a traveling nurse, so she decides to go there, and they casually date, and things kind of go from there. And both of them have very traumatic things in their life. Justin is having to deal with the fact that he is about to get full custody of his 3 younger siblings because his mother is going to jail pretty much, and he never expected this as an adult to be the like dad to his siblings. He never expected this. Emma has a lot of traumatic past with her childhood, in particular with her mother, who suddenly resurfaces right as soon as she gets to where I want to say she goes to Michigan or something like that. I want maybe Wisconsin, Minnesota, something like that. Please forgive me on that. And her mom has always been in and out of her life. Man, he's been in foster care several times. Her mother would not show up for weeks at a time, and she still does that when she's an adult. And Emma still is having a lot of trauma with that. And so this book is all about both of these characters really wanting to be in love with each other, but also realizing that they have to do a lot of internal work on themselves before they can fully be in love. And as an adult, I respect that and appreciate that so much, because they were dealing with a lot of different things. And I love this book because of that. I connected with it so much on both of the characters. I have not had to take sole care of my siblings or anything, but I am only 36 taking care of my 60-year-old dad who has dementia, that got dementia because of his past decisions that he did. Like, it's all on him. That was the sole reason. And so Justin's kind of having to be thrust upon with taking care of his siblings, not because he wants to, but because of his parents' decisions and actions that he is getting the repercussions for. And that's exactly, I was like, feel you, feel you, I feel you. Emma has a very traumatic and very tumultuous relationship with her mom. I feel that a lot with my father as well, and with my mom too sometimes. And it's just, I felt so connected with these characters. They both are going through so much, but the way they found each other, the way they fell in love, the way they decided to work on themselves internally before, it was just so beautiful. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you want an emotional, heart-wrenching, but beautiful book, I highly recommend checking this one out. So there you have my top 10 books of 2024. Overall, a pretty good reading year. I really enjoy all these and I'm so glad I have read them. I would love to know which books are your favorite that you read this year. Did I inspire you to read any of these books I listed? Or did I disinspire you, like made you stay away from? I would love to know. Here's to hoping 2025 will be an even better reading year with more amazing and just fun and awesome reads. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.